Hi, I'm Brendan Healy, Director of Services here at Triangle. Today I'm joined by Dave Spurway, EMEA Power AI and Security Principal with IBM, just to talk about the latest Power platform that IBM have released to the market. So Dave, maybe if you could start off by, if you could give us some insight into how the new Power platform is delivering operational resilience to our customers.
Sure, absolutely. So we in IBM have kind of process called DOCS. We do like our acronyms. So designed for operational excellence. And what it means is we look at whatever took the servers out before. It's not just even servers. We look at the storage, we look at the platforms. What was it that actually caused them to fail last time? And then, or have an outage of any sort last time. And then we minimize that. So we work to be able to minimize all the unplanned outages across the whole range. So we look at the power boxes and see anything that took them down, what can we do to stop it happening again? And then we do the same process to look at the planned outages as well. So overall, you get the best quality of service out of the whole thing. So the new Power11 boxes are even better than they ever were before to make sure that these platforms stay up and running as long as possible.
And like that availability you're talking about there, are we talking about things like, online firmware updates, zero impact there? Because again, if you look at operational resiliency and continuity, firmware patching has always been a bit of a troublesome thing. Yes. for every hardware vendor, regardless of it, right?
Yes.
So it's been able to get, online and non-disruptive firmware updates. Is that now with the Power11?
It is. Because we went round and we did this unusual idea of talking to our customers. And so the customers told us precisely that actually the boxes, thankfully, are pretty resilient. They don't go down very often.
Yeah.
They have an old IBM saying that the software eventually works, the hardware eventually breaks. So if you sit on it long enough, hardware-wise, it will eventually have failures. But the current stuff is pretty resilient. And as I say, designed through this process to make sure we've removed as much as possible of that unplanned outage, so they don't follow very often. Still need to get off the unsupported hardware because the thing will break eventually, but if we can work with this kind of realm of making sure we have minimal downtime for the unplanned outages, it's then that planned piece. How do I make sure I can actually bring in the patches to address things like vulnerability? There is a bit of IBM with a cool name called X-Force. Very few bits of IBM have cool names, but that bit of IBM has a cool name. It looks at all the different security issues all across the world.
Okay.
And over a quarter of those that were looked at last year were because of vulnerabilities. Then what do you do with the vulnerabilities? You apply the patches. Why are people not applying the patches? Because getting the downtime is really hard.
Yeah.
So therefore, we've worked out a process where we can actually make that much easier, using some of the tech we had before, but also making it far more simple to be able to press a button and apply all the patches at that firmware level and soon operating system as well, to be able to patch the whole lot, to address vulnerabilities, to address other issues in the systems as well, without having a service outage.
So again, I suppose maybe taking it a little bit deeper, right? So you talked there about the customers achieving exceptional uptime. Can you give us some of the statistics behind that? Like what are IBM aiming at, and what, I suppose, look, IBM are known for stability, right?
Yeah.
Where does this Power platform sit in the world compared to other hardware platforms from availability and stability? And again, that passion that IBM has about making that so much stronger. Can you give us a little bit more insight into that?
We do have that passion, you're absolutely right, because it is a sort of process where we make sure that our systems are designed for those mission critical workloads. Having just flown over here, I want the things that help me do that flying, stay up and running and do what they do. So we are building these for mission critical workloads. We're not building them to play games. And so we build them to be as resilient as possible. So the only system that's more resilient, and not just IBM saying this, but other groups ITIC are saying it, is IBM Z. So IBM Z platform, the mainframe where the majority of our money lives, is even more reliable. But Power is the one that's just behind that. It's number 2 on the list, achieving what's now 6 nines of availability. So it's all statistics, and therefore we can still have downtime, but it's very, very, very minimal, down to the kind of 30 seconds kind of realm for most outages. And that's, again, now looking at both the planned and the unplanned, so that you can make sure that the service stays up and running, using different things we've got, and also much, much easier. I had my son come and join me for work experience, and so he did some of these things which are now being used by our customers to be able to maintain the boxes. We found that customers, when they did have some kind of issue, it might take 4 hours, 6 hours to be able to get the right logs together to be able to send them through to IBM to address a problem if they had it. So my 15-year-old son comes in and joins me. He's a smart lad, but he's not been doing IT that long. He's more playing games, but he could press the buttons to be able to raise a support call for a Sev1, system has gone down, gather all the logs kind of event, because we've now made it that straightforward to be able to do so, because some of this is about skills and about making it easier all the time.
Yeah, and that's really going to underpin customers, again, that operational continuity, that availability. Look, we all know technology breaks, right? If
Yes.
it didn't break, we wouldn't have jobs. That's the
Right,
reality of it,
right.
right? But it is, and again, like we had our head of managed services talk about that, minimizing that outage and
Yes,
getting the customer
yes.
back up and running. That's the job.
That's
You
the
know,
job.
that's what our managed services folk are really strong at. So again, obviously IBM, again, as you said, have listened to their customers, have made that getting information to IBM quickly, which means then I expect your resolution times are dropping.
Yes, that's right, exactly. So we're using AI behind the scenes. I mean, everyone has to put AI into the conversation at some point. My job title's got it in it. I've got to do it at some point. But we are using AI to be able to go through that data, understand the patterns and get there. But I have to get the data in order to be able to do that. And as you say, managed service is very important. We know that some of the areas on Power Boxes, the skills are getting harder to find. And so managed service makes complete sense, is that we can now bring in all those different structures in the infrastructure layer to be able to include all of our virtualization that's been there for many, many years, very, very low number of vulnerabilities. The vulnerabilities still exist, they still need to be patched, but we can use the right skills, such as the skills from yourselves, to be able to do that kind of layer to provide the service back to customers that is the level that mission critical needs that stays up and running.
Yeah, and maybe I'd actually like to take it up into the actual platform itself for a few minutes. So some of the operating systems that are running on the platform, and kind of some of the patterns that you're seeing with customers at the moment around, you know, their deployment of the platform. What are they using it for? What sort of workloads are they putting on it? Because again, I suppose, look, for folks who mightn't necessarily be familiar with the IBM Power platform, they might say, well, look, it's IBM and it's running some antiquated Unix platform, which, look, me and you know is not the case, but we live this day to day, yeah? So maybe you give some insights into some of the newer technology, the newer platforms that customers are running on the Power platform.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so we have these boxes being used. They're used by banks, of course, all the time. So very, very secure, mission-critical workloads. But they're not just banks. They're then also used by retailers to be able to make sure these are the things that keep the shelves stocked and are being filled up. They're used by all sorts of companies all over the world. And as you say, new patterns. We have logistics companies, for example, who have been running IBM I, core of their database, for a very long time. And then they have the process where somebody comes along and says, right, I'd like to have a quote from you, please, to be able to move stuff from here to there. And then it used to be that some poor soul had to read the emails, and they were getting a lot of emails, lots of requests for quotes, read the emails, and then put it into the database for somebody to then be able to react and produce a quote. So now we have AI being done at that point, running on the Power Boxes. Don't have to have an AI Power Box and a mission-critical Power Box. It's now the same system running the IBM I instances, does the process of extracting, entity extraction from the data in that email and populates it directly into that database. So that's a new thing we've now been seeing, real customers using AI for that kind of thing and deriving 5 times productivity benefits because they don't have to have that slow process reading it. The person, a human, still then looks at the results. They look at the results because you still have to have human in the loop. There are good reasons to we're not trusting AI for everything, but then you can react faster and get the quotes out faster and derive business benefit as a result. So we can do that kind of process. And as I say, still got the same IBM I. And I'm also seeing the use of these agents that IBM is quite fond of talking about, this world where the AI knows it doesn't know an answer, but is smart enough to know, but I can get it by doing this, and asking the databases that we have running on the Power Boxes. So we're seeing that happen more and more as well on these systems, some of that workload being done on the Power systems, because we can do very effective forms of AI there. And then to a platform selection piece, some AI is better done in the as-a-service world driven by the GPUs, where it needs that kind of power. But again, hybrid cloud, which IBM very much believes in, can be used there to put the right bits in the right places to be able to actually have an end-to-end service using the same data we've always had, same mission-critical secure solution, part of that platform, and you don't lose control of the data. It stays there. But then the questions being asked are done by the cloud that come down here.
Yeah, and actually, again, I think that's a challenge that a lot of customers are facing, is around where is my data? In the world of AI, you know, having to move your data to the AI engine is quite, you know, from a vulnerability security perspective, from an operational perspective, is quite risky.
Yes.
So IBM have actually flipped that. Yes, so we actually bring the AI engine to whatever platform is running on the Power platform. We run our AI there, and it's actually, you know, not only is it within the same data center, it's actually within the same physical box.
Yes.
So you have a physical security on your data, not just actually a logical one as well,
yes,
which is really powerful message.
Yes, that's right. Exactly it. Yeah, because we've had a lot of high-profile outages on cloud services.
Yes.
Of also cybersecurity on cloud services. And one of the things that's actually been the Power Platform has been doing so well for quite a number of years is that repatriation process that people are discovering. It's actually no surprise to me, but it's not necessarily cheaper to run things in the cloud. again, I've just traveled out here. I've stayed over a short period in a hotel, and it makes complete sense to do things over a short period in more temporary accommodation. But IT works the same way. If you're going to do things for a long duration and run that business solidly for the actually steady usage, then it makes more sense to own the thing, or have somebody like yourselves own it for them, but actually have that piece. The cloud is great for spiky workloads, and for new things, and that's great. Things that come up, things that go down, absolutely fine. So hybrid is real, but exactly like you say, this is my data, this is my crown jewels, this is what runs my business. Where do I want that to be? And that can and is remaining in the Power servers, and then we've got some of this new technology which can be called down from elsewhere. That if I'm going to be having an AI thing that does this, what tool do I want to use? That can be quite a spiky workload, and it's not necessarily running all the time, but it can be the sort of thing which can be run, work out what question it asks, and then come down to this nice secure location that is IBM Power that contains the data, keeps the data, and then serves up the answers coming out the other end.
And I suppose just taking off a little bit of a tangential question then, are you seeing many customers running Red Hat on Power and OpenShift, their OpenShift platforms on the Power platform? Because again, obviously fully supported. Again, you have that lovely boundary of the Power family that'll run it, regardless of whether it's the entry server or the top level guys. Are you seeing much from our customers in that space? Yes,
we're doing both. And so we are seeing one, for example, we know that the Watson X.data platform, the thing that can take over that extract, transform, and load, how do I move my data around, and multiple different sources of data, some of which are IBM Power, some of which are other ones, being able to bring that together is something that's coming to Power, and that's an example that will run on OpenShift. So we have OpenShift running on the Power boxes, and it can be there. And we have lots of our customers very, very keen to keep their actual data safe on the Power box, and then it can be augmented and added to by bringing that OpenShift-based cloud pack running on top of those systems. So OpenShift is definitely something we see being run by customers on our Power boxes. It's charged by the processor core, and so for the performance of Power means that those licenses are cheaper and it's reliable, etc. So OpenShift is very real for us, particularly for IBM software and also some of our ISV software. And then we also have the ability to be able to just run the Linux LPARs. A lot of what we're doing with this kind of AI work is maybe not requiring OpenShift because not all customers have those skills. And so I can put a Red Hat instance right alongside an AIX or right alongside an IBM I in the same physical server. And then we're making it easier to be able to run up the software in that stack using new methods of accessing the Python code to run in the RHEL LPAR. So it is both. We can see RHEL, and in all honesty, other Linuxes as well. We also have the Ubuntus, the SUSEs, and other forms are running alongside the Power boxes. As you say, we spent a little bit of money buying Red Hat, so we do quite quaver that piece, but it is OpenShift and RHEL running on the Power boxes alongside, depending on what the customer wants at the time. Yeah, and then I suppose, look, that gives opportunities then to customers, say, to have some spare capacity in their Power systems running the traditional platforms to actually start their RHEL journey on Power, to start some of their OpenShift on Power, or actually some of their AI workloads on Power. So it's even, again, that enables customers to get so much more value from the platform. Because, like, I know, as I said, I've been working on Power, not quite as long as you, but I've been around a while. And it is actually, Power boxes love running hot. They love running up to their capacity. They don't have a problem. They don't get upset if they go about 80%. They really don't. You know, they're built for that level of enterprise. So that driving of value for customers is, again, something that IBM are traditionally done and continue to do. Which again is great to see. Yeah, that's right, exactly, because we can do, as you say, they've been built to run that level. We can actually do guarantees to be able to show that they will be able to run at that level, which is not necessarily the case elsewhere. And we can also then, as you quite rightly say, bring in those AI workloads, in that we can potentially run some of them inside of IBM I. But if what that does is drive you the need for another 5 cores or so, and then you got IBM I license on top of that, well, maybe I put the AI beside, so those 5 AI cores can do their thing without attracting the IBM I license. And the same for AIX. I can run it in AIX, but if I drive a bunch of more Oracle licenses, maybe that's not what I want to do. And so I can choose to put them in the different places, but it can all be physically contained inside the same server. And then we can use our technology to be able to have them HA and DR'd across a couple of different systems without needing to actually lose control over this at all. Okay, Dave, just taking it up another level again, how are you seeing people modernize their applications using the Power platform? Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can see commonly about 3 different patterns that we have customers all over the world choosing to modernize. The modernization method customers are often using is that you can move to these things called containers, smaller individual packaged elements that can be some of the new code. And so we can see customers moving wholesale to do that. It's a viable option, and we can do that on the Power Boxes, where these new individual containers that can run on this platform called OpenShift, which is a great way to manage these containers, could be done on the Power Boxes in its entirety. And so you can take new business logic and applying it that way. You can replace the existing ones wholesale. But a far more common pattern is that we can do this incrementally.
Okay.
That we can add to the existing systems and add in some of these different little piecemeal new business elements. If I've got a new kind of world I can recognize in my industry, there's a new thing that's coming down the line. How do I add this to my existing system? That incremental modernization is something customers are doing all over the world. And that can be done very effectively running these little things called containers. And so that can be done with OpenShift on Power. And you can even do it as well in a smaller scale in an individual RHEL instance. You can run something called Podman that allows these little individual containers to come up in a far more smaller contained instance that can sit alongside the IBM iBoxes. And our virtualization is entirely happy to run this OpenShift alongside IBM I, alongside AIX. Or we can be running the RHEL instances very happily, same physical box, sharing compute resources to be able to make it economically make sense across the different boxes very, very effectively. So that modernization is something customers are doing all over the world, quite often with containers, very effectively with Power Boxes, and augmenting what they've got already. And we can also see in the future, we get new things coming down the line with that as well. We can see the elements that we have, the virtualization that we have within the Power Boxes already enables us to make sure that we have great isolation between the AIX instances, the IBM instances, the Linux instances, the OpenShift instances. Today, the container platforms running inside this larger platform don't have quite that same level of security, but we can bring that through in the future, flow that through, enabled by our virtualization, which we own the whole lot of. We own the hardware, the silicon, the virtualization, those operating systems, and then we talk to Red Hat for those elements as well, and can integrate the whole lot. And we know what we're going to do into the future. We just launched Power11, but we know what we're going to go through into the Power 12s, the Power 13s, the Power 14s. I was traveling with the chief architect. He's having a lot of fun talking about what's happening in the future, and he knows exactly what's going to go on. And yes, I've been taking him to some fairly heavy drinking countries, and it all worked out just fine. But he knows exactly what he's going to do things with chiplet architecture and all sorts of things. So he's really happy with where he is for the next 15 years into the future. So our roadmap's looking really, really strong. Strong for the software, strong for the operating systems, strong for the hardware. So it's a great platform to invest in.
Yeah, and again, I suppose in summary, really what you say, obviously, it's while you're talking there, I was just thinking it's hybrid application modernization, which actually allows that incremental, as you say, and you're also IBM are ensuring that the level of security that we have on our Power Platform today will be applicable to containers.
Yes,
to make sure, because again, and we would see it around container deployments. Often the security bit can get forgotten about.
Yes.
Everybody's so busy trying to get these things to work together because a lot of moving parts.
Yes.
But IBM are actually driving that on the platform through your software to make sure that your containers are treated with the same level of enterprise security as your back-end critical data.
Yes.
Which again is really that. Again, IBM have always been really good at that.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's really great to see that.
Yes. Yes, that's right. So I have a lot of fun introducing my daughter into these presentations. So my daughter happens to be the same age as the virtualization platform on the Power Boxes. So I have a lot of fun showing pictures of her dressed as a Christmas pudding, which is a baby, and then which is much bigger and grown as a fully sort of qualified degree apprentice in Jaguar Land Rover. And of course, Jaguar Land Rover, one of the many customers that has had significant security outages recently. Yes. So what we can talk about there is the fact that we have, as you say, orders of magnitude fewer vulnerabilities. It's what we said earlier. It's not zero. We still need to maintain the patching process, still need to look after it, but it is orders of magnitude lower than elsewhere because we design our systems for mission critical workloads and not everything. I don't need them to play games and have all of this other software that can do other things because I know what they're there for. It's for the enterprise grade workloads. And then we can design that exactly as you said, to be able to have that virtualization built in, to flow that heritage all the way through the virtualization up into the software to be able to make sure these are staying there rock solid to be able to be reliable. And then we have, as I described, repatriation coming back from clouds because they haven't saved money and they're not necessarily that much more secure. But not all workloads do move. It is exactly like you said, that hybrid modernization, incremental pieces, putting the right pieces in the right places is the reality. But there's still a very strong place for IBM Power to be part of that, be that in Power VS Cloud, be that on-prem, and then also as part of a hybrid cloud solution as well.
Thanks, Dave, for that huge insight. It's really great to see. I suppose, like, if you look at it from a customer perspective, what a customer actually gets with the platform is, again, most stable platform, lowest vulnerabilities of any platform. And that desire and drive and passion that IBM has had to make sure that you retain that level.
Yeah.
And also that from a business outcome perspective, and we would often see it is the power platforms go in and they almost get forgotten about.
Yes.
Because they don't break.
Yes.
They sit there, they do their job, and they're at the core of the enterprises. So again, Dave, really appreciate you coming over to talk to us. It's been a pleasure, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. A pleasure to be here.